I almost didn't record this video. At 82 years old, I sometimes wonder whether people still want to hear advice from someone my age. The world moves fast now. Everyone is looking for the newest expert, the newest study, the newest miracle solution. And then there's me, an 82-year-old woman sitting in her kitchen, holding a cup of tea, talking about kidneys. Not exactly exciting, is it? But then I thought about something. If what I'm about to share helped me reclaim my health after years of suffering, maybe someone out there needs to hear it too. Maybe someone is lying awake tonight, exhausted from making endless trips to the bathroom. Maybe someone is staring at swollen ankles, wondering if this is simply what getting older feels like. Maybe someone has been told, just like I was, that they should stop expecting improvement and learn to live with it. And if that's you, I want you to stay with me, because my name is Catherine. I'm 82 years old, and while I am not a doctor, I am living proof that your body can surprise you when you start giving it what it truly needs. Today I wake up with energy. I sleep through most nights without interruption. My ankles aren't swollen, my legs don't feel heavy, and my kidneys are functioning far better than they were years ago. All because of 4 simple foods that became part of my daily life. Foods that were sitting in grocery stores the entire time. Foods that cost less than most people spend on coffee. But before I tell you what they are, let me tell you where I was before everything changed. Because unless you understand how bad things became, you won't understand why I'm so passionate about sharing this story. About 12 years ago, I was 70 years old. Most people around me assumed I was doing well, and from the outside, I suppose I looked fine. I smiled. I stayed active. I attended family gatherings. I never complained much, but privately I was struggling. Every night was a battle. I would go to bed exhausted, fall asleep, then wake up, bathroom, back to bed, fall asleep again, wake up, bathroom, again, and again, and again, and again. Some nights I made that trip 5 times, sometimes 6. By morning I felt as though I had never slept at all. The fatigue followed me everywhere. Simple tasks felt difficult. Grocery shopping felt exhausting. Cleaning the house felt overwhelming. Even conversations became harder because I was constantly tired. Then there was the swelling. By evening, my ankles looked completely different than they had that morning. My shoes felt tight. My legs felt heavy. Sometimes I would sit in my chair and stare at my feet, wondering why my body seemed to be working against me. I didn't understand it. I was drinking water. I wasn't doing anything outrageous. Yet something clearly wasn't right. The final straw came one summer afternoon. I was standing in my garden. I've always loved gardening, flowers, herbs, tomatoes, just simple things. But that day I bent down to pull a weed and felt a deep ache across my lower back. Not a sharp pain, a dull pain, the kind that lingers, the kind that follows you everywhere, the kind that whispers instead of shouts. And somehow that made it worse, because it never truly left. That evening I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Not because of the pain, not because of the swelling, not because of the bathroom trips. I cried because I was afraid this was my future, afraid that every year would be worse than the one before, afraid that my independence was slowly slipping away. And for someone like me, independence means everything. I've always been stubborn. My family will happily confirm that. I've never liked depending on other people. I've never liked feeling helpless, and suddenly I could see a future where my health dictated every decision. That terrified me. A few weeks later, I scheduled another doctor's appointment. The doctor was kind, very kind. He reviewed my tests, asked questions, listened carefully. Then he said something I know many older people have heard before. Catherine, some of this is simply part of aging. Part of aging. Those 3 words stayed with me. Now, before I continue, let me be clear. Getting older absolutely changes the body. I'm not denying that. But I couldn't accept that explanation completely. Something inside me resisted it. Because while aging might explain certain things, it didn't explain why my symptoms had become so much worse. And it certainly didn't explain why I felt so disconnected from the energetic woman I used to be. So I made a decision, a simple decision. I would start paying attention, really paying attention, not just to my symptoms, to my habits, my routines, my food, everything. And what I discovered shocked me. I realized that over the years convenience had quietly taken over my kitchen. Nothing dramatic, nothing obviously unhealthy, just small choices repeated thousands of times. Packaged foods, too much sodium, too many processed ingredients, too little fiber, too little fresh food, too many things my kidneys had to process, not enough things that actually supported them. The truth is that kidneys are incredible organs. They work every minute of every day. They filter your blood, balance fluids, remove waste, support blood pressure, help regulate minerals. And they do all of this without asking for applause, without taking a break, without stopping, for decades. But eventually, if we continue making their job harder and harder, they begin struggling, not overnight, slowly, quietly, the same way a candle burns down little by little. I decided I needed to start helping my kidneys instead of burdening them, so I began researching, reading, learning, asking questions, listening carefully, and eventually I discovered the first food that changed everything. Beans. I know, not exactly exciting, certainly not glamorous. Nobody creates television commercials celebrating beans, but don't underestimate them, because beans may be one of the most powerful foods I've ever added to my daily routine. At first I started small, a bowl of lentil soup, some black beans added to a salad, a side of beans with dinner, nothing complicated. But after a few weeks, something interesting happened. I felt fuller longer. My digestion improved. And most importantly, I started feeling lighter, not dramatically, just slightly, enough to notice, enough to keep going. What fascinated me was learning why beans helped. They're packed with fiber, and fiber does something remarkable. It helps remove waste before that waste ever reaches your bloodstream, which means your kidneys have less work to do. Think about that for a moment. Instead of asking your kidneys to handle everything themselves, you're giving them assistance. You're sharing the workload. And after years of making my kidneys work overtime, that felt like exactly what they needed. I started eating beans 4 or 5 times every week, sometimes more. And little by little my body responded. The swelling wasn't gone. Not yet. The nighttime bathroom trips still happened, but something was changing. I could feel it. The progress was slow, but it was real. And that's when I discovered the second food, a food I never imagined would become part of my life, a food that completely changed how I thought about protein. And once I understood what it was doing inside my body, I knew I had stumbled onto something important. I'll tell you about that food next, because what happened after I added it to my daily routine was the moment I realized my kidneys were finally beginning to recover. When you're trying to improve your health, one of the hardest things is staying patient. We live in a world where everyone wants results immediately. A new diet promises changes in a week. A supplement promises miracles in days. An advertisement claims it can solve problems overnight. But the body doesn't work that way, especially when you're older. Healing takes time. Recovery takes consistency, and kidneys, perhaps more than any other organ, respond to what you do repeatedly rather than what you do occasionally. My name is Catherine. I'm 82 years old, and by the time I had added beans back into my daily routine, I was beginning to feel hopeful for the first time in years. Not because everything was suddenly fixed. It wasn't. I was still waking up at night. My ankles still swelled occasionally. My energy still came and went, but I could feel small improvements happening beneath the surface. And sometimes that's all you need. A small sign that you're moving in the right direction. A small sign that your body hasn't given up on you. That's when I discovered the second food, tofu. Now let me tell you something honestly. When I first heard someone recommend tofu, I laughed. I really did. I grew up in a household where meals revolved around meat. Breakfast had meat, lunch had meat, dinner definitely had meat. The idea that a block of tofu could somehow help my kidneys sounded ridiculous, at least at first. But I've learned something over the years. The older you get, the more willing you become to admit you don't know everything. And that's a good thing, because being willing to learn may be one of the healthiest habits a person can have. So I decided to try it. The first time wasn't impressive. The second time wasn't much better. But after learning how to prepare it properly, I began enjoying it. More importantly, I began understanding why it mattered. The truth is that kidneys work incredibly hard to process waste created from protein metabolism. Protein is essential. We need it. Our muscles need it. Our immune system needs it. Our entire body depends on it. But not all protein affects the kidneys in exactly the same way. What fascinated me was discovering that plant-based protein often places less strain on the kidneys than many heavily processed animal products. That doesn't mean animal foods are evil. It simply means balance matters. For years I had been eating protein in ways that made my kidneys work harder. Now I was giving them an alternative, something nourishing, something easier, something supportive. And after adding tofu to my meals several times a week, I noticed something unexpected. My energy improved, not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily. Morning after morning I felt stronger, less sluggish, less weighed down. It was as if my body was finally receiving nutrients without paying such a heavy price for processing them. That realization changed everything. Because once I saw progress from the first two foods, I became even more committed. I stopped looking for shortcuts. I stopped looking for miracle cures. Instead, I focused on consistency. And that's when the third food entered my life, an apple, one simple apple, every morning, without fail. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Catherine, surely an apple can't make that much difference. That's exactly what I thought too, but sometimes the simplest habits create the biggest results. For years my breakfasts had been inconsistent, sometimes toast, sometimes packaged cereal, sometimes nothing at all. I wasn't intentional. I was simply eating whatever happened to be available. But once I began eating an apple every morning, something interesting happened. My cravings changed. I felt more satisfied. My digestion improved even further, and I discovered that apples contain something called antioxidants, compounds that help the body deal with oxidative stress and inflammation. Now, inflammation is one of those words we hear constantly, but here's what matters. When inflammation becomes chronic, the entire body suffers. Blood vessels suffer, joints suffer, organs suffer, and kidneys are no exception. Healthy kidneys filter efficiently. Inflamed kidneys struggle. So every morning I started eating an apple, not because it was exciting, not because it was fashionable, because it was simple. and simple habits are often the easiest habits to maintain. Years later, I still eat one almost every day, rain or shine, busy or not busy, home or traveling. The habit remains. And here's another lesson I learned. People often underestimate the power of daily actions. They want dramatic transformations. They want dramatic stories. But health usually improves quietly, one choice at a time, one meal at a time, one day at a time. That's how real change happens, not through perfection, through repetition. And as the months passed, the results became harder to ignore. I was waking up fewer times each night. 3 trips became 2, 2 became 1. Some nights I slept all the way until morning. The first time that happened, I actually checked the clock because I couldn't believe it. I had forgotten what uninterrupted sleep felt like. I had forgotten how wonderful it feels to wake up refreshed. The swelling in my ankles also began changing. Again, not overnight, but gradually, the tightness in my shoes became less noticeable. My legs felt lighter, walking became easier, even gardening became enjoyable again. I wasn't dragging myself through the day anymore. I was participating in it, and that distinction matters, because life isn't meant to be endured, it's meant to be lived. One afternoon, my granddaughter visited. We were sitting outside drinking tea. She looked at me and said something that surprised me. "Grandma, you seem younger." I laughed. 82-year-olds don't get younger. But I knew what she meant. She wasn't talking about age. She was talking about energy, presence, vitality, the spark that returns when your body starts cooperating again. And that conversation made me emotional, because I realized how close I had come to accepting decline as inevitable, how close I had come to believing that exhaustion was normal, how close I had come to surrendering. Thankfully, I didn't, and thankfully my story wasn't finished, because there was still one final food left, the 4th food, the food that completed my daily routine, the food I still eat every single day. A food that not only supported my kidneys, but also helped support something else that most people completely overlook, their gut. And once I learned how deeply the gut and kidneys are connected, everything finally made sense. I'll tell you about that final food next, because it became the missing piece of the puzzle. And when I combined all 4 foods together, the improvements became impossible to ignore. That's when my life truly began changing. For most of my life, I thought the kidneys and the stomach had very little to do with each other. One filters blood, the other digests food. They seem completely different, completely unrelated. But one of the most surprising discoveries I made during my journey was learning how connected everything inside the body truly is. My name is Catherine. I'm 82 years old. And by the time I had added beans, tofu, and apples into my daily routine, I was already seeing improvements. I was sleeping better. My energy was returning. The swelling in my ankles was decreasing. My body felt lighter, healthier, more cooperative. But I still felt there was something missing, something I hadn't figured out yet. And then I discovered the 4th food, plain yogurt. Not the sugary kind, not the dessert disguised as yogurt, just simple, plain yogurt, the kind many people overlook because it isn't flashy, the kind sitting quietly in the grocery store refrigerator while people walk past it, searching for something more exciting. At first, I started eating it because someone suggested it might be good for digestion. That was all. No grand plan, no expectations, just curiosity. I would slice an apple into a bowl and add a serving of plain yogurt beside it. Sometimes I added a tiny drizzle of honey. Sometimes I ate it exactly as it was, simple, consistent, easy, and after several weeks I began noticing something. My digestion felt calmer, more predictable, less bloating, less discomfort, more balance. That may not sound dramatic. But when you're trying to improve your health, every improvement matters. Every sign that your body is functioning better matters. Every small victory matters. As I continued learning, I discovered something fascinating. The digestive system and kidneys communicate constantly. When the gut is healthy, fewer unwanted substances enter the bloodstream. When fewer unwanted substances enter the bloodstream, the kidneys have less work to do. Think about that for a moment. For years, I had focused only on my kidneys. Meanwhile, another part of my body had been quietly influencing them the entire time. That realization changed how I viewed health altogether. Because health isn't about one organ, it's about the entire system working together. The heart affects the kidneys, the gut affects the kidneys, sleep affects the kidneys. Stress affects the kidneys. Everything is connected. And once I embraced that idea, my approach changed completely. I stopped looking for miracle solutions. I stopped searching for one magical food, one magical supplement, one magical secret. Instead, I focused on creating an environment where my body could function at its best. Beans, tofu, apples, yogurt, every day, every week, every month. Not because I was chasing perfection, because I was building consistency, and consistency is far more powerful than motivation. Motivation comes and goes, consistency stays. A year after making those changes, I went back for another checkup. I remember sitting in the examination room feeling nervous, not terrified, just curious. Curious whether the changes I felt were reflected in what the doctor would see. When he entered the room, he reviewed my information quietly. Then he looked up and smiled. I will never forget that smile, because it wasn't the smile of someone delivering bad news. It was the smile of someone pleasantly surprised. My health markers had improved. My blood pressure was better. My overall condition was stronger. And while no doctor would claim that 4 foods alone performed a miracle, there was no denying that something positive had happened. I left that appointment feeling lighter than I had felt in years, not because I had become young again. I wasn't trying to become young again. That's an impossible goal. I left feeling empowered. There is a difference, a very important difference. Aging is inevitable. Decline is not always inevitable. Those are not the same thing. Too many people confuse them. They assume growing older automatically means surrendering, automatically means suffering, automatically means losing quality of life. But my experience taught me something different. Your age matters. Of course it does. But your habits matter too. Your choices matter. Your consistency matters. And those things remain within your control. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is believing it's too late. They're 65, too late, 70, too late, 80, definitely too late. That's simply not true. I began making serious changes in my 70s, and many of the most noticeable improvements came afterward. The body is remarkably resilient, not perfect, not magical, but resilient. Given the right support, it often responds in ways that surprise us. Today, at 82, my life looks very different than it did years ago. I wake up grateful, not because every day is perfect. Some days are harder than others. Some mornings my joints remind me exactly how old I am. Some afternoons my back still complains. I'm 82. I expect that. But overall, I feel strong, capable, independent, and independence means everything to me. I still cook my own meals. I still tend my garden. I still take walks around my neighborhood. I still enjoy conversations with friends. I still wake up excited about tomorrow. That excitement matters more than people realize, because when you lose hope, healthy habits become difficult. When you have hope, healthy habits become easier. Hope gives effort a purpose, and purpose creates momentum. Sometimes people ask me which of the 4 foods is the most important. My answer always surprises them, all of them, because they work together. The beans helped support healthy digestion and balanced eating. The tofu gave me a gentler source of protein. The apples became a daily source of nutrients and consistency. The yogurt supported digestive health. None of them were magical individually. Together they created a foundation. And foundations are what healthy lives are built upon. Not shortcuts, not miracles, foundations. If you're watching this today and struggling with fatigue, if you're waking up repeatedly during the night, if you're dealing with swelling, if you're worried about your kidneys, I want to tell you something from the bottom of my heart. Don't give up on yourself. Don't assume things cannot improve. Don't assume the future has already been decided, because you don't know what your body is capable of. I certainly didn't. If someone had told 70-year-old Catherine that 12 years later she would feel healthier, sleep better, and have more energy than she did back then, I probably would have laughed. Yet here I am, living proof that change is possible, not instant change, not effortless change, real change, the kind that comes from patience, the kind that comes from commitment, the kind that comes from showing up every day and making one good choice after another. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson I've learned. Health isn't built in dramatic moments. It's built in ordinary moments. The breakfast you choose, the walk you take, the glass of water you drink, the meal you prepare, the decision to keep going when progress feels slow. Those moments seem small, but together they create your future. Before I finish, there's one more thing I'd like to share. Take care of your relationships too. Health isn't only physical. Loneliness affects the body. Stress affects the body. Isolation affects the body. Call a friend. Visit a neighbor. Talk to your family. Laugh when you can. Forgive when possible. Those things nourish you in ways no food ever can. And a nourished life is often a healthier life. My name is Catherine. I'm 82 years old, and every day I still eat beans. I still eat tofu. I still eat an apple. I still enjoy plain yogurt. Not because I expect miracles, because these simple habits helped me reclaim something precious, my confidence, my energy, my independence. And if my story encourages you to take even one small step toward better health, then sharing it has been worth every second. Take care of yourself. Be patient with yourself. Trust the process. And remember this, it is never too late to start treating your body like a friend instead of a burden. I truly believe that, because I lived it, and I hope you will too.